Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity podcast, episode 77. Now, we really hope you've been enjoying the episodes we've been putting out so far in 2022. We've already had some fantastic guests on. And before I go any further, I just want to say that I think it was the previous episode or 2 episodes ago, I said that we were going to be having Lucas Aaron on from Range of Strength. Lucas couldn't actually make that podcast in the end. We are in the process of rescheduling that. So if you're expecting Lucas to be on last episode or this episode, that is why. We will get him on. We'll get him on very soon. Now, today we've actually got some questions from listeners that we're going to be going through and answering, the 3 of us together. And we've sort of selected a few. We had quite a few questions actually coming because I put the word out for questions and topics that people would find interesting. So the 3 of us are going to do our very best today to answer those, and hopefully you will get something from the questions. And also maybe after today, you'll kind of think, well, actually, I've got some questions and I've got some topics that I'd like them to cover. And we are always open to them being sent in, via the Facebook group, the Facebook page, Instagram, however you want to get questions to us. And we will be doing more of these episodes going forwards, answering your specific questions and covering your specific topics. So first of all, I will say welcome. Hello, Mr. Peter Lant.
Hello.
Peter
Hello?
has a
Hello.
Peter has a woolly hat on indoors.
That's because my hair's crap, not because it's cold.
But his beard, I know I keep mentioning his beard. I shouldn't really, because it's going to sound like I've got some kind of man crush on him. His beard,
You're jealous, mate.
His beard is
it's gone beyond yours.
And it's very dark, and my beard is very grey now.
Well, it's still got grey in it there, but you've got lighter. Well, you did have lighter hair than me, didn't you? But it's funny because you mentioned the other week that I look like Gerard Butler out of 3000 or something. Now I'm starting to look, if you're only listening, I'm starting to look a little bit more like David Bellamy.
Dear me. And Mr. Paul Bassett in London. How are you doing, Paul?
Not bad. My question to Peter is, how bad does a hair day have to be to result in a hat?
I don't think it's probably that bad under there.
Well, it's probably all right. It's quite flat, but it's it's not that warm around here anyway. So,
Okay. And before we crack on with the questions, I also want to say that we've spoke about it a few times in the last few weeks, the David Keown Irish Move Athlete workshop at Unique Results on March the 13th. We are now sold out. So we've got 18 of us going along, including the 3 of us. Well done to those of you who managed to get a place. I've been contacted by a few people after we've sold out, but unfortunately, David had sort of said 18 people max to make sure that he can kind of give everyone, a good degree of supervision, training, and keep an eye on everyone, and so everyone gets the most from the day. So we're sold out. If you are booked on to come along to that in March, we can't wait to see you. That's going to be fantastic. So we've had some questions sent in today. We've had quite a few actually, but what we've done is kind of handpicked. Well, we've picked 3 main topics to kind of go with today. We're going to kind of have a conversation around them. And what's quite interesting is we haven't actually discussed these questions before going on air. So I'm sure that out of the 3 of us, we may have differing opinions or differing experiences on some of the questions, but that's what we're all about, really, just kind of sharing ideas and where we're at with things. So first of all, I'm going to read the questions. What's the word? Is it verbatim? Is that the correct term? So I get them correct. The first one is a question from Les, and Les asks us to talk about something around balance in training for us more mature folks. So I know Les is in his 60s, very healthy, fit gentleman he plays walking football, he runs, he bowls, he plays cricket as well. But a chap from England in his 60s, and he says maybe something about balance in training. such as the optimum split between cardio, strength, flexibility, and then he's put in brackets stretch, Pilates, yoga over the week. And he also asks about the balance between active and rest days. So there's quite a lot to cover there, but we can just kind of start having a conversation around that and see where we go. What do you any kind of input initially to kick us off, Peter or Paul? What do you think?
I wish a lot of my clients played walking football, because I mean, the amount of injuries that come back, kind of like on a Sunday. I don't know what it is about Sunday league football. I got a guy who came in, he sent me a photo of his foot, and he said, "Can I come in tonight? I'm just going to train the upper body if possible." And then I said, "Well, what does it look like?" He sent me this picture of this horrific kind of ankle that had completely swollen up, like he'd been in a ditch for about 6 weeks. But and then he came in last week covered in bruises along his back. So I think anything that can kind of slow down football for the over 40s might be quite good. I don't know.
Just on that point, we've got a couple of members actually who they're both friends actually, but they both in their 60s and they both play walking football. But I will say that they still get injured, and I'm amazed at how bad.
I've got visions. Do you remember Austin Powers when you got that when the guys get in the way of the steamroller?
Yeah.
Is it like that? They're just coming at each other really slowly, like, get out of the way.
So
it's like one of those things. I'm about to send you a photograph of my ankle. I hope you've had lunch. It's like, oh no.
Well, I've got a client who's a lower limb specialist, and I have had a few text messages saying this is what happens when you're diabetic. Picture of surgery. You know,
yeah,
it's not a pleasant thing.
What do you think around the and he specifically asks, I mean, like I say, he's in his 60s, and he specifically asks for us more mature folks, but I suppose we can broaden it out. And does it necessarily change as people get older, or what's your, where would you go with this, Paul?
I don't really believe in balance. I mean, I believe in being strategic.
I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. I believe in being strategic based on what your central goal is. So I think to be good at anything, you're going to create some imbalance in some way, whether it's an imbalance in the amount of time you have, whether it's a muscular imbalance, whether it's an intellectual imbalance. It's very difficult to be everything. When we look at the kind of physical specimens in the Olympics or just anything, they're very sports specific, aren't they? So, what you're trying to do is just be strategic in terms of the outcome. So what is your outcome? I would start with, like, if someone is over the age of 60 and they want to be able to do a certain thing, then the balance comes into making sure there's a kind of hierarchy of things that you focus on. And so that means you'll excel at that thing you want to do. If you want to excel at just being alive, then that probably broadens things. But then again, you can still be strategic. So say you come in, you're 65 and you've got historically bad knees, then that's where your focus is, and that's where you put all your time, and then you'll create. I don't think balance comes into it. Then I think it's. I think it's easy to kind of mistake balance for stupidity.
Are there any broad sort of brushstrokes that you could say where, I suppose general guidelines or general recommendations that you would make for the average person who comes in to train, who's not going to take part in any kind of competitive sport? They don't have any specific, physical challenges or ambitions, but it's about health and longevity and wellness. I mean, is there a certain amount of times that you would say is optimal to do some kind of strength training per week? Is it necessary to have dedicated rest days? I mean,
I suppose my answer was quite esoteric, and my answer was probably quite facetious at the same time. But I would say, for the average person who errs on the side of sedentary, then really they have to do anything they can. The balance is to be active as possible. And then the question is then how much time does that individual have and how far do they want to take it? And my programs are designed around busy people. I'm sure that you guys are the same, where you're working with people with families, with injuries, with probably over the age of 30, etc. So I drilled it down to a minimum of twice a week, strength training. But then there's a kind of a deeper question, which is how are you spending that 2 hours a week? You know, because you can, for me, like my clients need assistance, and we've only got so much time. So then we're trying to put everything into those 2 hours, whereas an equally kind of effective option could be you do something small every day, you know, that's going to counteract what you do most of the time. So if you do what most of the time you're sat at a desk, or if you're retired, it could be that I mean, there's some people just don't do anything, and there's some people who do things. So it's just to kind of counteract that and make it something habitual. I think that's where balance comes in.
What do you think, Pete? Yeah, what do you think, Pete, on this?
I kind of agree with Paul. It was funny because when he said I don't believe in balance, it was kind of like, oh, right, okay. And then it's actually when he's explained that, I think the same thing. And balance is different for everyone. So if someone's not very strong, but like, so I don't know, let's say someone's been running marathons their whole life, but never done any strength work. And then they get to their 60s, right? What's the balance between doing strength work and cardio and all that? It's like, well, you don't need to do that much cardio, do you? Because you'll be really good at that. So, but you might not be as strong as you want to be, and then you might be getting like osteoporosis or something like that, like things like that, like knocking at the door. So therefore, you might want to start doing a bit more strength work, but not too much because you're not used to it. So you have to start to step into it and dabble in it, possibly get a coach to help you, that sort of stuff. So I think, yeah, balance is different for everyone depending on where you're starting from. But if your goal, I think when people want balance, your goal is mainly to be able to do many different things. So to be able to be strong enough to maybe play tennis, or, you know, go running, or play football, or walking football, or whatever it is you do.
Have options. To basically
have options.
Say, I fancy doing something.
Yeah.
I do it. Yeah.
Be an all-rounder, you know what I mean? And that's like, and that tends to be, I don't know this guy, Les, but that's kind of what that says to me about him. He's probably a bit of an all-rounder, and he just wants to make sure he stays fit, strong, and healthy as long as he can. And the balance in that is to do things. And also the thing about when people talk about cardio, cardio is always a difficult subject because people think they need to do loads and loads and loads of it, don't they? But you're doing it every day. And I mean, if he's playing walking football and stuff like that, that's cardio. So I would say you don't need to go to the gym to do cardio. Use that time. Use the time, the focus time when you've got to go somewhere to do something, to do the strength work and bits of mobility and stuff like that, which you can also do at home as well. And use your free time that you have, if you have any, to do your cardio by going for a walk, or going and doing something, just being a little bit more active, you know. And if you are sedentary, then just to go out for a walk for 5 minutes or something, you know. So that sort of thing is like, how do you fit all of this into your lifestyle? And it's like, well, you know, that's another question that's going to come next, obviously. But like, it's how do you fit it all in? And it's like, you can fit your lifestyle around it, not it around your lifestyle as well. So
is a balance sometimes kind of construed as some kind of almost neutralizing everything, in the sense that like balance is a neutral posture, you know, no kyphosis, no, you don't want your chest too tight, but you've got to be this, you've got to be that. When the thing is, sometimes like it doesn't really matter. Like you might not get any pain, it might not stop you doing anything. Is having perfect posture balance? I don't know. If you're a climber, is that important to have perfect posture? Or a fighter, you know, when you're in a hunched over position, does perfect posture mean anything? It would be balanced to have that, to be really nice and upright. But I don't know if it would be any use or would make any difference.
But it wouldn't help your sport, would it? Or your lifestyle.
I think in some ways when people ask about and I think possibly where Les asked about it, like I say, because I kind of know him, and he does park run on a Saturday. Like I say, he plays cricket in the summer, he plays bowls in the summer, does his walking football, he trains at the gym. But I think when people maybe think about balance of training and I suppose ticking all the boxes of, if you think about the big three, which would be maybe cardiovascular, strength training, and mobility, stroke flexibility, and rest days and recuperation as well. I suppose many people think in terms of not overdoing any one thing and avoiding injury. You know, I think that's quite a big part for many people who maybe think, if I do too much of this, is it going to be bad for me? You know, in terms of if I do too much running and not like the example Pete just said, if I run 6 days a week and do no strength training, is there an issue there? If I, you know, do strength training 5 days a week but can't touch my toes, is there an issue there? You know, so it's that kind of avoiding injury, I think, is an element that people have in their minds as well.
There's yes and no to that, I think. The first one is, you know, could you be like David and do a 2-hour long cycle marathon? Is that too much kettlebell swings? Well, probably to get to that stage, he had to answer a ton of questions about his ability to do it. And therefore, it forced him to confront other things where a moderate, less kind of crazy, nutty option would never have done that. So it's easy to sometimes say like, hey, I'm going to hold off being too intense with this idea that somehow that is more healthy, but you never actually have a reason to confront some of the imbalances and issues that may actually flare up longer term, you know?
The funny thing is as well, so this is just made me think really, what can you do too much of? And what do people tend to do too little of? And I'm working this out in my head as I say it right now, because we haven't had this conversation yet. So, but say mobility, can you do too much of it? Not really. You can do mobility every day for an hour a day, 2 hours. You can do it for as much as you like, and it's going to be really good. Whereas if you do strength work for 2 hours a day, every day, that's going to be overdoing it, isn't it? If you do like loads and loads of loads and loads of running for, you know, it's the likelihood is it increases I would say it increases the chance of injury without doing any of the other stuff. Whereas mobility kind of, and when people talk in this question, we had the question about mobility, flexibility, this and that. I mean, flexibility, I don't even know what that is anymore, because, you know, I tend to talk more about mobility, stability, and motor control, and just being able to control a movement through a movement pattern, which you can then add weight to, and then it becomes strength work. So you get mobility from strength work as well, as long as you're not overdoing it. So that to me says the balance is that you don't need to balance everything out. You probably need to do more of one. You can do as much of this as you like, but watch out how much of this you do, because it may, it may cause problems in the like down the road, especially if you're getting a little bit older as well, where mobility becomes more important. But some people, like David Keown, for a perfect example, he's got great mobility, but he works on it every day. He just put a post up yesterday or today saying he does like 45 minutes of hip work after he's done a heavy session the night before, all the time. And he's already got great mobility, but that's because he does it as well. And Phil McDougall said on his episode, I can't remember which episode that was, but he moves his joints every single day through full range of motion every day. And he sees people like Steve Cotter do that as well. And that's why he does it, because those are the people who've got great mobility. So
I think like anything, there's a saying, isn't there, around, is it something like that, you know, poison is kind of dose dependent or dose specific, or anything can be a poison when taken to the, you know, to the extremes, you know? So,
but poison hardens you occasionally. Like, you know, the body will degrade if it doesn't come across some kind of hardship. It's almost
this kind of, is it hormesis or
mental hardship, physical hardship. It's just, again, it's not necessarily a poison. It is on face value. On face value, being hit by a kettlebell every time you jerk it up or clean it or whatever is probably poison, you know, because it bruises or whatever. But then the body adapts and it no longer becomes anything.
So I'm just thinking back to two of the podcasts previously where we had Finbar Tulan on, who moved away from, I mean, obviously he got up to a kind of a, you know, world champion kettlebell sport, has done hundreds of thousands probably of movements, you know, using the double bells. And then he started to find that he was, you know, getting more injuries and things. Then he moved away now he moved on to the pentathlon with the single bell, which was, he explained that through his kind of training career and competing career. And then at the same time, you had, say, going back to the Steve Maxwell episode, where it was, quite broadly, the kettlebell movements, he doesn't, necessarily see value and feels they might be dangerous. But again, it's if you're doing 3 sets of 20 swings a week, it's probably different than training, multiple hours a day, 6 days a week, kettlebell sport. So it's very interesting. And I think probably from this question, it sounds like we're saying it depends, and we're not giving any definitive answers. But I do think that with regards to this, it does depend. I mean, one thing that I do probably have quite not a fixed opinion on, but this idea of rest days. We often get this with people who come into the studio and they'll say, well, can I train every day, or do I need rest days? Is it healthy to do 7 days? And I try and reframe the question around that in terms of, well, it depends what you mean by rest day. And it depends, ideally we're designed to move every day, aren't we, as human beings? So I think,
how much recovery do you need from the thing you're doing?
I did a video yesterday. I was listening to the Jordan Peterson podcast with, I can't remember the name of the guy who was on it, but he had a great example of, and Harinder went on about this on his podcast that he did with us as well. And basically, if you pick the comfiest chair in your house, right, really comfy chair, sit in it and get yourself in there and get all nice and comfortable, really comfortable position, and then go right and don't move. Stay in that comfortable position and don't move. If you last an hour without moving, you're doing all right, because you're gonna get uncomfortable, because that's what happens, doesn't it? If you can't stay in one position forever. So like you're saying about rest days, people think, does that mean doing absolutely nothing? But a rest day for me is going for a 10-mile walk with a dog, because I enjoy it and it's nice and I find it easy. Years ago, that wouldn't have been a rest day. That would have been a heavy day. And I would have been knackered at the end of it. But now it just comes easy. But that's because of the years of kind of building up to it and just doing it. So again, that depends.
And I think it comes from back to these days, like we spoke about before, where bodybuilding and resistance training to failure for multiple sets, and then needing a rest day to let your body recover from that. But the way that most of us train nowadays is, I think, I know that when we spoke to people like Dan John before, who's in his 60s now, and Rick Brown, Mr. Maceman, and Perry Nicholson, and all these guys, and Mark Rifkin and Tracy Rifkin, I think most of them say that as you get certainly 50 plus, actually doing something every day, like you mentioned, Paul, it doesn't need to be a full 90-minute workout or an hour workout, but doing some kind of movement-based exercise stroke training, whether it be rucking, whether it be walking, whether it be doing the mobility, whether it be doing a 15-minute session. But I really think it's that whole use it or lose it, and trying to stop the body seizing up. And I think as we get older, I mean, we're all in our 40s, but certainly most of our guests who've been in 50 plus have really highlighted the importance of doing something, every day, and not letting the rust set in, as it were.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, cool.
I mean, recovery is a tough one. It's what I notice on we do a 12-week program, the Amazing 12, and people at the beginning don't understand or don't have a concept of what hard means. And that evolves throughout the whole of their 12 weeks and obviously beyond. And I think it's the same when I started training and getting my workouts program for me. So we all have the same coach. We've mentioned this loads of times, but I've definitely noticed about what I think I need to recover from physically, and actually what I need to recover from mentally, and also set my expectations to one side as well. Because a lot of the time it was me making a mental decision that I needed to recover. But actually I go into every single workout, not fatigued, but having some sort of kind of ache or something, not like joint ache, but just like I worked hard the day before.
Heartache.
and so, you know, the body adapts, and then you just make changes to the way you do things outside so that you can complete the work.
Yeah.
The question is the work worth doing? If the work's worth doing, you'll find a reason to do it. If it's not worth doing, you'll find another reason not to do it. You know?
You can take this to many different levels, though, can't you? Because rest, like someone might say, like, you know, how many rest days do I need? And it's like, right, what's your sleep like? What's your stress like at work, at home? You know, I've been talking to some of the guys who are training. Like one of them was saying, he gets up in the morning. He comes to train with us 3 days a week in the morning, but then after that, he's just on it all day. All day he's working, blah 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 blah, and then he's got to and even taking the dog for a walk for an hour becomes something quite stressful, because then people are like, well, it's nice to be outside with the dog and everything. He's like, yeah, but I've got to get back to finish this thing before my son gets in from school, and then I've got to make his dinner. So actually, it becomes a finite thing, so therefore he gets stressed about it. So it's like, well, how can you deal with that? So when you're talking about recovery days, you need to deal with all of that first, because if you're stressed, you don't get a recovery. So recovery comes from thinking how well you eat as well, and sleep and all of that. So that's going off on a massive, like, different thing that you could discuss for hours. But for some people, before you even, if you've had a massively stressful time at work, and then you've got to your 60s and you're starting to wind down, then it becomes like, you know, what does rest look like to you now? Because rest years ago, you probably haven't had any for 20 or 30 years, you know, like proper rest.
Well, actually, I think
you should be resting. You should be doing something so you don't fall apart.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, actually, Peter, I think you've actually, I think it was totally unintentional, but you've led us quite nicely into the next question, which some of your points on that last one will lead us in.
I'm going to say it was intentional, then I'll make it
okay. And this is a question
that undercuts our entire kind of podcast, isn't it?
It's all planned. This doesn't just fall together, does it?
So it may make it look messy. And
that 5-hour meeting that we had about this podcast on Tuesday has worked out really well, hasn't it?
Okay. So this one's from Paul, and he's asked us lots of things. And like I say, we've had quite a few questions, so we're just picking a few bits out today. But he's kind of said, could you discuss normal people, in brackets clients, and how they can deal with life getting in the way? So this ties in nicely with where we just ended on that last question. You could discuss, or can you discuss, nutrition in a world where rubbish food is in your face, and the basics that we all agree on. I think he's talking about the three of us, i.e. water, movement, strength, and just kind of life getting in the way and organizing things, because we've even had a conversation just prior to pressing record, I think, which will frame this a little bit as well, where we were away, I was away snowboarding with the group from the gym last week, and totally out of my routine and totally out of my habits for a week. My eating changed for the week. Obviously, I didn't do any strength training for the week. I was snowboarding every day. And just coming back on Sunday, we're recording this on a Thursday, this first 3/4 days of the week, I've been kind of all over the place, you know, like my diet's not been, the food's been okay, but my training, I'm finding it harder to get back into it. And it's amazing, just a week out or a week of not doing something, the way that can actually impact your routine. So I think that you started to touch on it, Pete, like you say, normal life getting in the way, and actually trying to get on top of and get some control over and some organization around the big picture of your life. And we've spoke about this with a number of guests before, that actually getting in the gym, once you actually start your warm up and you start doing your first set, is the easy part. It's the other kind of 165, 164 hours of the week that you need to manage that usually put a spanner in the works. So if we can kind of maybe delve into this a little bit, what's your advice for client? I mean, this is a very real world problem, isn't it? And it's real world for our members and our clients, and also for the three of us as well.
Well, yeah. I mean, the first thing, thanks for mentioning you going snowboarding again, because we've had to watch that all over Facebook and Instagram, which has been great while we've all been working working hard to make a living, to scrape a living.
It was a work trip, as I keep telling people. Because
I
was there with the group of members from the gym, so it was a work
tax
trip.
deductible.
Call it a jolly. That's all it was.
Yes, exactly. So anyway, my sympathy goes out to you, James. It really does. My heart, honestly, I feel for you. Also, what you just said there is great, and I've made a note of this, is it happens to you. So people ask these questions and then they go, yeah, but it's easy for you because you're a trainer or whatever. It happens to everybody, right? It happens to us all. Everybody's got some sort of imbalance somewhere at some point, because it's and it's never easy for anybody.
We're not. Are we not normal? Are we normal? Are we one of the normal ones?
Well, I don't know.
I don't know.
That's I get told I'm special, but I don't quite know what that means. But anyway, so you'll always say that these days. I don't even know. Anyway, we'll get cancelled. Yeah. So the biggest thing for this, I think, is this is getting more and more a problem. It's getting more and more a problem because everyone's on. I was thinking about this this is going a little bit off topic, but just about things like phone calls. Someone rings you, you're expecting to answer like there and then. When we didn't have mobiles, that wasn't a thing. You couldn't ring someone until 6 o'clock in the evening when they got in from work or whatever.
What was it when it got cheaper? Was it after 6 o'clock in the evening?
Yeah.
You remember like when you just had your landline, and then after 6 o'clock it was cheaper. So you'd wait till 6 o'clock and then you'd ring someone. Yeah.
Yeah. A minute passed and they were engaged because someone else had rang. But
you remember phone numbers as well.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? So then like things took longer because someone wanted a question, ask you a question, they got an answer 3 days later or whatever.
People turned up when they said they would.
Yes.
Rather than cancelling 2 minutes before they got there.
Exactly. Whereas now, like, you're on it all the time. Like the amount of people, I don't have my phone, any notifications on my phone switched on at all. My phone doesn't make any noise because if it did, I would never get any rest ever. Like throughout the day, I'd just be on it all the time. And you see people doing it in the middle of sessions as well. And they'll hear something, they'll go and check the phone. And I'm like, what are you going to do? Well, I mean, okay, some people got kids and stuff like that. So then there might be something, but I'm like, what are you going to do? If someone's asked you a question from work, now you're just going to get stressed about it for the next 40 minutes. I had a client checking
Bitcoin in the middle.
Yeah, for the next 40 minutes rather than just looking at it in 40 minutes time and getting stressed about it then after you've finished what you're doing. But anyway, this sort of stuff doesn't change overnight. So I used to be that person in my job. I know you did as well, Paul. And actually you did as well, James. We leave you out of this, don't we? Because you've never had like a
real job.
A real job. But no, but you still get the stresses with it, right? Of running your business and all that sort of stuff. And it doesn't happen overnight to be able to say, right, do you know what? I'm going to change my lifestyle. I'm going to overhaul it. And it's taken me 8 years so far, and I'm still not done because I've gone too far the other way, to be honest. So
what do you mean by that? Just
as in I've got loads of free time now, and then I worry about that and worry that I should be doing more, right? So it's
do you feel not? Do you feel guilty or uneasy about having a lot of downtime, a lot of
because I could be doing more for more. I see people who are really busy and they're doing loads of things for other people as well, and I'm like, well, I could be doing all that. Do you know what I mean? And then it's like, so I'm working on that anyway. But it's a constant. It doesn't matter where you are. There's going to be a constant thing of I should be doing this, or I should be doing this, or I shouldn't be doing that, or whatever. So it doesn't happen overnight. But what I would say is, and we were talking about this just before we came on. And this is what I said to that guy who I just mentioned earlier, who said he's on it all the time. It's like, you've got to try and find opportunities within your day to build in those little habits of doing things like mobility and stuff like that. I was talking to one of the ladies who I train, and she does stuff when she's in the supermarket queue and what have you, just stand on one leg and silly little things like that. And she was like, but you get funny looks. And I was like, yeah, but does it matter? You get funny looks anyway. You do, like, everyone gets funny looks, don't they? So I'm going to have to think about this a bit more. So I'll pass over to you or Paul, but that's the biggest thing for me is people think, right, I need to try and sort my lifestyle out and they try and do it this week. And it's like, no, It's incremental changes over a very long period of time. But what you got to do is identify the things that stress you, the biggest things.
Mm.
So I was thinking about this even when I was in the supermarket earlier, because I had to get back for this. And there was a problem with one of the tills, and this was happening. So it took me 10 minutes longer than it usually would. But I wasn't stressed because I had plenty of time, because I had like another half an hour to get back for this. Whereas other people might be thinking like, oh, I'm going to be back on the minute that it starts. And now I'm not, and now I'm going to be late. So it's about allowing yourself that time as well. So instead of having everything, one thing after the other, and then I've got to get here and do this and do that. Like I said about the guy with the dog walk, instead of giving yourself an hour for a dog walk, either take the dog for a 45-minute walk or somehow give yourself an hour and a half, and then but only use that hour. And then you've got, you've got downtime then. That's your rest time, There's lots of little ways of doing things.
What do you think, Paul? What kind of conversations do you have around this, around normal life getting in the way and helping your members navigate this kind of modern problem?
Probably given 99.9% of the world are normal people, normal people do extraordinary things. So there's no limits. Every day people do crazy things. The people you probably don't know when you meet them that they may have done something extraordinary. So I think there's really, the limitations are internal. They're mental. They're self-limiting beliefs, and they're part of that is navigating those, accepting them, being aware of them, and again having a strong reason for doing something that would make you organize yourself in order to do it. I'm always pretty amazed. You get people who are like doctors or whatever, and they're nurses who are working crazy hours, and then they somehow manage to be an Olympic athlete in their spare time or something. It's like loads of people, if you really focus, can achieve incredible things. People without education can start multi-million, billion-dollar businesses. It's so I think
it's interesting, isn't it? Because there's the saying, isn't there? If you want something done, give it to someone busy, because they're used to managing multiple things and getting things done. And like you said, the doctors and the nurses or the teachers or the people who run businesses can be very, very efficient and very effective at managing their time.
Well, given that all of us have a spectrum of individuals, and then many of them are kind of like, you may have like people doing same roles and who have vastly different results. And they may, you may have someone I've got people who don't have kids who do extremely well, and I've got people who don't have kids and really struggle to make time. And you could say it in all walks and all different businesses and all those people. So the interesting thing is that what is that person doing in order to succeed? And that's kind of part of my quest, is to kind of reverse engineer some of those things, because I've got a lot of clients who do things really well and succeed. I've got a lady called Sally who's just been quietly ticking over, just awesome, just absolutely awesome, just like not shouting about it, just whatever. She's soaked up something, she's consistent, she's training, she's eating well, and she's lost loads of weight and is really strong now. And it's just not through some big push or anything. She's, I'm trying to work. I've actually got a testimonial that I'm organizing with her just to work out exactly what she's doing, because it really works, and she's busy, and her husband's broken his collarbone recently, and he broke his humerus like 6 months earlier. She's got young kids, had COVID, blah, blah, blah. Work's going crazy. Still doing really well,
It's funny, is it? Because and then on the kind of the flip side of that, you see some people who maybe, they have a day where they've got to put the bins out and go and get a haircut, and it seems like they're massively stressed and overwhelmed. So
that would be me.
That would be...
Seriously. Sean gets in from a full day at work, right? And I'll be like, you'll not believe the day I've had.
If I put the bins out, I got a haircut and I went to the supermarket.
Yeah, exactly.
You can always hear me swearing when I try and pull the bin bag out and it rips.
Okay, yeah. So I suppose this comes down to, you touched on it there, didn't you, Leah? I suppose almost personal productivity and personal organization and the way that you manage.
Do you know what those people will have? They'll have a schedule or schedule, depending on where you're from.
Yeah.
they'll have things planned out. They don't just go, do you know what, today I'm going to like walk up a mountain or become an athlete or whatever. They have a schedule and they stick to it.
Yeah.
So,
and they're very what's the word, protective over their time.
Yes.
To the point
And
where
this comes from something that I know you work with on your Strong You project, James, and stuff like that. Is like not saying yes to everything and not feeling like you have to be there for everybody because that depletes you, and then you're no help to anybody, are you?
I think that's the thing. Before we finish, Peter, that hits the nail on the head, because it's like if you want to train, if you want to be effective at training, you've got to have the programming equivalent of saying no.
Yeah.
You know, if you're trying to eat well, you've got to have the dietary equivalent of saying no to things, knowing when to cut things out, knowing when to simplify, knowing when to stay on track. You know,
this even goes with, so this fits. This is coming together in my head now. This fits with rest days as well. Whatever your perception of a rest day is. So a coach I used to work with, Paul Moore, who's quite a character, but I don't have any sessions on a Wednesday. So on a Wednesday, I can work if I want, and I can do admin or do stuff like accounts and all that sort of stuff, but I don't have to. But I still have a schedule for that day, or a schedule or whatever for that day. Because if I don't, I'll end up doing nothing. And then I'll be like, I had that whole day and I didn't do anything. Yeah. So that was a waste of time. So I might as well work. So I have planned what I'm going to do with my free time.
Well, people say that about their diet. They say, I don't want to do a diet because then I know exactly what I'm going to eat. But then they know that when they have this kind of completely open kind of calendar to cook whatever they want, they end up cooking probably the same thing or something that's really bad for them, you know?
That's another thing, though, to go with that. When people say like, oh, it'll be boring if I have a diet and that, and it's like, right, write down what you do eat then, and you realize they have salmon on a Monday and sausages on a Tuesday and this on a, and it's like, you're having like 3 different foods. But this goes with it. Making lists is really good as well, because then you got because if everything's in your head, you get overwhelmed and you forget to do things. And then like that's why everyone does everything on a Friday afternoon. So I would say make a list of where you spend your time during the week. Make a list of it. Because you realize there'll be hours where you're doing nothing, or you're on social media or watching videos on YouTube or just daydreaming or whatever, and then make a schedule of what you're gonna do that week and when. And then you can go down the realms of why and all of that sort of stuff, which goes on with goals and blah blah and all of that for focus stuff. But honestly, even down to time you're going to spend. So I used to think date nights, people having date nights with husbands, wives, girlfriends, whatever, used to be a ridiculous thing. So I was like, well, why would you do that? You spend all your time together, and it's like, but you're not the way. You're not spending time together. You're spending time in the same room or whatever, but you're not together. So like actually scheduling time, especially when you've got kids and stuff like that, scheduling time if you can for the pair of you helps relationships grow as well and stuff like that, doesn't it? And it you know,
I think I mean, it's. I think what we'll do before we move on to the last question we're going to cover today, I think one thing that both of you, what you've just been talking about, which is so important, is the word boundaries, you know, and it's comes across in the way we manage our time, the way we manage our focus, and also, you know, the things you mentioned there, Paul, you know, dietary choices and training choices and that's, I mean, it's such a massive subject, isn't it, around that? And going back to last week, Dave Whitley, Iron Tamer, you know, talking about values and beliefs and, you know, who you want to be and the way you want to live your life. And I think that saying no is such a powerful thing that, you know, all of this kind of crosses over into. So, I mean, that's a subject we can go on for ages, but hopefully it was a bit of a conversation, obviously, but hopefully that's been useful to some people and kind of addressed Paul's kind of points and Paul's questions. The final question that we're gonna talk about today is from Fred. And again, Fred had a number of questions, but we picked this one out for today because it's kind of quite a tight, focused question that we can finish on, hopefully. I think we do have slightly different, not opinions. I think we, you know, experiences and the way we use these things. But the question is, what are your thoughts on technology and fitness tracking? things like wearable fitness trackers, smart scales, etc. They're the kind of scales that lots of my members have got that, you stand on them and they Bluetooth the results to your phone and put it into graphs and all that sort of thing. Do you use them yourself? If you do, how do you incorporate them and the data they produce into your own fitness programs? And just to kind of broaden that one out, I know that Fred himself is a technology guy. He's works in banking technology, and he's very kind of tech savvy, apps and gadgets and all that sort of thing, and loves data and figures. And I think when we had James Brees on, I think before, who talked about some people are very sort of statistically driven and data and want the graphs and want the numbers, and other people are slightly more, I suppose, artistic and creative in their leaning, and they prefer a little bit more freedom. So specifically on technology and fitness tracking and wearable fitness trackers and apps and things, what are your guys' opinions in terms of what you actually use yourself and what you'd recommend to clients?
Everyone can own a hammer and chisel, but it doesn't make you Michelangelo, So, I mean, I like data, but I think, I was listening to Paul McElroy talk about something recently. He was like, if the numbers are going up, you're getting stronger. If you pick up a heavy thing, stick it overhead, that's all the data I need. I use just I've got a notepad on my phone that I just drag and drop my new workout in. I take it as given that I've done it, and if I've done it, then I've lifted it. And that's about it. Trackers, I have a heart rate monitor when I want to focus on the endurance stuff, and it costs me $14.99 and beeps when I go over my heart rate, and then the rest of it's my diary. That's it. That's it. I have a love-hate relationship with these things because, again, they're there. They have. I understand the concept behind them. It's saying, hey, we want to help people be active. We want to help give people information, but rarely does people need any information. I don't think they don't need more information. They need more action. So if I was to create an app, it would basically have a virtual hand that slaps you in the face and gets you to do something. Because like a little pin in your pocket that just pops out and goes, drink water, or something that gets you to act on something, because the data is only as important as the actions that it creates. Because I've got people who are just recording the steps, recording their heart rate, and it's like,
why?
I think people can become kind of tied to the data as well, can't they? And tied to these devices, and in terms of, if they're not wearing their device, the workout didn't count. Or sometimes even probably to the extreme that if they forget to wear their device, they won't even do the workout because it's not worth it without the device. It's almost like that thing on on Facebook or whatever. If you haven't got a photo of it or a video of it, it didn't happen.
It didn't happen, yeah.
So if you haven't tracked it, it didn't happen. So some people get almost to that extreme about it, don't they?
Well,
so they actually won't do the thing because they won't know how many calories it's burnt or whatever.
Calories,
Even though you'll have burnt some, probably the same amount as you did last time, because when you did track it, it's weird, isn't it?
You did a half-hour walk.
Yeah.
I mean, often people say, "Well, I've done 1,500 calories in the last 2 workouts, therefore I can eat a cake."
It's what the data is used for, isn't it? Because some people have this compensatory kind of mindset whereby it's, and I've heard people even say it where, I've burnt 500 calories off here, so I can go and eat 500 calories there. And they're just simply trying to, swap calories in for calories out and creating a deficit so they can go out and have a couple more drinks in the evening or whatever,
I think
like Marjorie Dawes on Little Britain.
Yeah.
If you have half the cake, that's only half the calories. So it's half the calories, so you can have twice as much.
I believe in tracking. I think tracking is incredibly important because then it gives you an objective overview of what success might look like. And then you can, depending on the kind of analytical nature of the individual, you can drill down into why you might not be achieving your goal. So you track your workouts. So, and if your workout doesn't take you to where you want to be in the time you thought it would, then it's a wrong kind of programming. But having a record of that's important. And probably tracking your measurements regularly. So putting them in a basic app like Map My whatever it's called, whatever, I can't, MyFitnessPal, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
We use Strava with our clients sometimes as proof. So as an accountability things, I don't care what the line looks like. I don't care if it's around Waterloo or whether it's around Putney Bridge or whatever it is. I just like to see them do a photo of the screen, post it in my application, which I have for my business. So I have a Hounds of Health app where we communicate with clients. We have communities in there. We have all the metrics in there. So as a coach, I can keep them accountable to that. And so basically all that data there is just for someone like myself or my team to just hold them accountable to the thing that they wanted to do. And it just proves that they've done it. Does it, and therefore it aids them in their goal by virtue of keeping them accountable to what they said they do. So again, it's about, for me, any app that has its worth is about, is it making you take action? Because if it's not making you take an action, it's just taking a number down and then giving you a smiley face and a virtual firework saying congratulations, that it's useless.
What do you think, Pete, in terms of your own personal preference and your own personal use?
Well, the only tracking app I use is I've got a steps counter on my phone, and my phone's with me when I'm out walking and stuff, and that's literally it. And I don't even really use it, but I have been recently. I've been posting every week just to get the concept of NEAT out there again. So non-exercise activity thermogenesis, so just daily stuff. And I'm doing like 60 miles a week, right? Which is more than most, but I'm doing 60 miles a week, just in my daily walking around and taking the dog for a walk and stuff like that. So that's, to me, that's like quite, and it doesn't, the biggest thing with me is it doesn't take up any of my time to look at that. So all this data you can have and all of that, what people are saying they've got no time. I think they're quite good. These things can be quite good at being procrastination devices.
Yeah.
And like you say, not doing the workout because you didn't have the app on you, or not doing this, or saying, right, well, I will do that, but I've got to have all the data first before I go and do it because I don't know how much to lift or whatever. Which is another reason why I source that to Paul and say, you just send me the thing. I'll see that it's progressing. So all I need to know, my tracking on that is, did I do it today or did I not? Simple as that. Yes or no, done or not done. And the other thing, and James, you've kind of alluded to this, but and I thought about this, and I thought, do people do this? But I think they do. And you might get one of your scales that measures body fat and all of that, whether they're accurate or not. It doesn't we'll not go into that, or just something. And people try and game it and work out how they can still get the result without having to do all the things that they do by using this technology to try and, because any statistic, anything can be made to look good or bad, right? Anything in like any statistic and all that, so you can use your fitness tracker and all that and say, well, that's not working. The data says this, which isn't great, but that's because of this, and then make an excuse of it and say, but other than that, so you're still tracking it and seeing that you're not doing the thing, rather than just saying, I'm just going to go for a walk, or I'm going to go and do my session or whatever. So I think it just adds to another level of things to think about when actually we've got so many things to think about and worry about that just, and for most people who are starting out, it's just creating a habit and just getting it done.
So I think what you've both said so far really is, I mean, for me personally, I after we had Phil Maffetone on, I bought a polar chest strap and watch, and I use it. I do kind of 1 to 2, usually 1, but this week 2 sort of 5K runs in a week. And then I'll do 2 spinning classes every week. That's the only time I use my heart rate, actual facility on the watch, if you like, just because that's purely for cardiovascular stuff. Anytime I do any strength training at all, I've got my watch off anyway. And like you say, it's either I'm following the program, I know what I'm doing, and I've just got to do the work. And I think that one thing I do have, which is a 45-year-old abacus, which I use in the gym. That's my favorite app. My old-fashioned wood abacus.
I was going to say this actually. I forgot, but yeah, you can use. So James has got an abacus just to count his sets. You can
when you train with Paul McElroy, you need to keep a track of all your sets.
Yes, exactly. Well, you've got an abacus. I've got that. Look, just bark, like, you know, what was I going to say? You can use lampposts or like a tree in the park or whatever is your goal, you know, you can use like little milestones like that. You don't need apps. There's things everywhere. There's absolutely everywhere. I use the belt line. So for nutrition wise, I use the belt line of my boxers, right? When that folds over, I need to sort myself out. Right? Simple as that. And I'm not joking here. When that starts to fold over, I have one less egg for breakfast, a little bit less for dinner. I might sometimes I'll have like yogurt, nuts, berries, whatever as a snack during the day. Whether I'm hungry or not, I'll just do it anyway. I'll not do that. And I'll do that for like 2 weeks. And then it's all back, and then it stopped folding over. And I'm like, right, I'm all right now. And it's as simple as that.
Do you have an app to measure elastic band fatigue over time?
No.
Well, you may find.
No, because all my pants, I've been in a relationship for a while now, so they're all really old.
What I was going to say is, so I think that, and I know that people do, and again, this comes down to personality types and things. I know some people do love the data, they love the tracking, and it becomes a part of things. And I think we wouldn't want to say whatever works for you as an individual works. But I think the most important thing is that whatever you are working towards, you are tracking something. You need some kind of, some kind of measure of progress or regression, or you're standing still. And that's going to be dependent upon your individual goals, what you're working towards, what your targets are. And you need to be tracking something that's meaningful for you and something that also fits well with your personality type and everything else. I mean, I think that's fairly
I mean, I think like for the people who love the data, then albeit if you get a buzz out of it, then it's only going to help, isn't it? So that's perfect. Just don't let the buzz of the data get in the way of the actual thing that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Right, guys, I think we're closing in on the hour now, I think. So there are 3 questions there that we've answered. They're not all the questions, but we would like more questions to come through. So like I said at the start, please do either on Instagram, on Facebook. They're probably the Facebook group. You know, if you have questions for us, please do put them in. Thank you to Les. Thank you to Paul. Thank you to Fred for the questions that we've gone through today and the kind of topics that we've discussed. Any final thoughts from Mr. Peter Lant?
Not really. No. No. Like obviously we get when we get guests on in that we'll have final thoughts because like we don't do that much talking, do we? But yeah, I've done a fair amount of this.
No, that was good. It's good, and it's good. I think I really like that, and I think we've said we've probably got another 6 to 9 questions that have come in that maybe another time we'll pick another 3 questions and go through them and discussion points from listeners, which is great. Mr. Paul Bassett, anything you'd like to say in conclusion?
I think that was probably the podcast of equivalent of It Depends. It's basically the answer to everything, wasn't it?
But I think in a way that's there, as we said the other week, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and it really does depend upon your personality type, your goals. I think there were some kind of, I suppose, universal points in there about rest days and frequency of training and that sort of thing, life getting in the way, and even around the importance. The universal thing is the importance that you're tracking something, something meaningful. And
I think isn't part of the job. Part of the thing is what we wanted to do is create a lot of clarity around health and fitness, because a lot of people have questions and they just don't know what to do. But I think it is very important that people realize that they do have to think.
Yeah.
Because if they aren't engaged in it and they just palm everything off, I know it depends. I don't think this works. Maybe this is better. I don't know what you mean by that definition. All these things kind of feels like, oh my God, they're not really answering the question. But the thing is, at some point, you have to engage in the journey that you're in. And you can't just say, I'm going to take on a fitness app. I'm going to take on a personal trainer. And then they're just going to make it easy for me to do. They can make it a faster route, but unless you are engaged in it, unless you have just gone, right, okay, I understand this person can help me now, but I've got to be coached, I've got to be coachable, I've got to be engaged. You know?
I've just written that down. It depends, comes down to the fact that we get asked questions and all this, but it comes down to individual responsibility and what are you prepared to do?
Yeah. You'll find a way if you want it.
Yeah. The information is all out there, and we try and get rid of all the fluff and just keep it simple, because we could talk about it with all these acronyms and all that sort of stuff. But just to keep it simple and say, here's where to begin. And then it comes down to individual responsibility for what you want. Because we can't just say one thing and go, well, what do you think about rest days? Well, everyone should rest on a Sunday. I mean, it's not going to work, is it?
Excellent. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you again to Les, to Paul, to Fred for the questions for this week. We will be back next week. We are currently in the process of, like I say, we're rescheduling Lucas Aaron. We're in touch with various other people to line up some guests. I hope you're enjoying what we are doing week in and week out. This was episode 77. So please do share, like, subscribe. If you're listening or watching on a platform that allows you to leave a review, please do so. If you'd like to join the Facebook group, just go onto groups on Facebook and search for Health Oddity, and we will come up, and then just click to join that and we will let you in. We will see you next week. Thank you. And please do send your questions in to us so we can use them on future episodes. Take care. See you later.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com, or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Oddity.